Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on cycling tourism organized by Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. My name is Venelina Varbova, and I'm a thematic expert on environment and resource efficiency. And today I will be facilitating this webinar together with my colleague, Katharina Krell, whom you can see on the screen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Katharina. I believe that cycling is changing people and places and can generate positive change in the world. Magdalena, could you please? Yes, thank you. And could generate positive change in the world. I also believe that everybody has a personal story to share related to cycling and the multiple benefits that it brings. Today, we are going to explore the multiple benefits of cycling tourism and to hear from successful good practices from different European regions, how to best support this leisure activity that brings so much added value to regions. In addition to health benefits that cycling tourism brings, it also brings a lot of economic benefits to often remote areas by channeling consumer spending to these areas and supporting local economies. Before we continue with the content of the webinar, some housekeeping rules. The webinar is going to be recorded, and the recording will be available shortly on the website of the Policy Learning Platform. You can ask questions using the chat function, which you can see on your right side. You cannot speak in public. Katharina and myself are going to read the questions that you're going to ask. We encourage you to raise your questions and share these with us, as the webinar is intended to be interactive. On the right side, you can see also a hands out section where we are going to upload and share with you links to various documents that will be mentioned. Now, before continuing with the first presentation, I will say a few words about the Policy Learning Platform. The Policy Learning Platform is the second pillar of the Interreg Europe program. It aims to seeks to capitalize on the results of the Interreg Europe projects and to ensure that their achievements can inspire and inform other regions throughout Europe. This is done by supporting inter-project learning, particularly among projects that work on similar topics. Also, it aims to bring on board regions from Europe which are not part of Interreg Europe projects, but could learn from this exchange. The platform is providing ad hoc support, expert support to regions which are looking to overcome certain policy challenges. The platform is addressing 4 thematic areas, and this webinar is organized jointly by 2 of the thematic areas, low carbon economy and environment and resource efficiency. The platform also provides expert support and helps to build a community of like-minded people working on similar subjects. On this slide, you can see some of the thematic analysis that have been done by the platform, and specifically by environment and resource efficiency and low carbon economy thematic areas under the Knowledge Hub. These are some of the policy briefs that we have developed, but there are also a number of articles, stories, and other materials in writing that we encourage you to check. In addition to that, the platform maintains a good practice database that includes practices, expert validated practices on various subjects. And on this slide, you can see some of the practices related to the topic of today's webinar. These are only some of the examples. We encourage you to check the good practice database for further inspiration and ideas. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is organized jointly by Thematic Objective 6 and Thematic Objectives Objective 4. On this slide, you can see the Interreg Europe projects that address natural heritage and sustainable tourism. The topic of cycling tourism is addressed by several projects, but also there are other themes like innovative models for protected areas, sustainable tourism in riverside cities, in mountainous areas. Some of the projects work on sustainable tourism in coastal landscapes, river deltas, and so on. With regards to the projects that fall under Thematic Objective 4, there are projects that address regional cycling, urban cycling, as well as data collection and processing, safe mobility, sustainable tourism, cycle routes, and so on. We encourage you to check the websites of these projects, which also contain interesting good practices and other results stemming from the interregional exchange. A few words about the agenda. Later, we will continue with the first presentation in a few minutes, which will be delivered by my colleague Katharina. It will be focused on the multiple benefits of cycling. Then we will have a keynote speech on how to support cycling tourism in a coherent way. And here I would like to invite our speakers from EcoCycle project, Alain and Jose Carlos. Could you please turn on your cameras and microphone and just wave your hands, just for people to see you?
Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello, Alain. Hello,
Hello.
Carlos. Thank you very much. Could you please switch off your camera and mic now? Thank you. This keynote presentation will be followed by a good practice pitch from Poland, which will be delivered by Magdalena Osełka. And now I'd like to invite Magdalena just to turn on the camera and the microphone and to say and to wave the hand. Magdalena? I saw her a minute ago. I'm sure that, okay, Magdalena will join us.
I can see her, just not hear her. You just go on, Venelina.
Okay, thanks. And then the next presentation will be the presentation that will be delivered by Ed Lancaster from European Cyclist Federation. It will be about the EuroVelo initiative. After these presentations, we are going to have a panel discussion. We'll reflect on some of the insights and some of the points that would have been shared earlier, and we will also intend to take the questions that will be coming from the chat. So again, this is meant to be an interactive event, and we would like to encourage you to share your questions with us. And I'm looking forward to an interesting online event. With this, I will stop. And I would like to invite Katharina to deliver the first presentation.
Thank you, Venelina. So I'm Katharina Krell. I'm the thematic expert for low carbon economy, and I would like to share my screen, please. Okay, just a second. So, well, I grew up in South Germany, and as all the kids, I learned how to cycle very early, probably at age of 3, 4, just like everybody learned to ski and the time that there was still snow. I mean, every kid did that. And ever since, I cycled to school. Later, I cycled to university. Now I cycle to work. And I have taken this habit along to all the countries and all the cities where I've been living. So it stuck with me, and I obviously like cycling. Over the last month, I have done a lot of research about cycling for our policy brief on cycling cities. And ever since, I like cycling even more because I have discovered all the multiple benefits that it has. And I want to share these highlights from our policy brief here with you as a little introduction. So first of all, cycling is relevant for very many policy areas. It's obviously related to mobility policy as a means of transport. It is also linked to energy because it doesn't need any energy imports apart from the calories that you burn from your own body. Is relevant for environment, both the local environment and the big climate, in the sense that it doesn't have any particle emissions or CO2 emissions that are harmful for the global environment and for your local health. And that links it to the health sector, because actually particle emissions are responsible for almost 400,000 deaths per year in Europe. And that is much worse than Corona. And it's every year because it's systemic. It's not just once. So actually the health impact of more cycling will be very positive. Also, the increasing obesity is putting more and more strain on the public health systems. Cycling uses much less space than cars, not only for the roads, but also for the parking, obviously. And last but not least, it is linked to tourism, the other focus of today's webinar, in the sense that cycling very positively impacts local tourism, and cycling and tourism can very nicely reinforce each other. So looking at the benefits, cycling has essentially benefits that can be split in benefits for the individual and benefits for society. And you've seen I've done that here. For the individual, cycling is convenient, it's on demand, the bike is there when I want it, it's low cost, both in the acquisition and the operation of this mode of transport. It's individual, I don't depend on anybody else to choose the route that I want to take. It's healthy, it takes me door to door, and as such it's a last mile solution. And as we have learned during the pandemic, it is COVID-19 safe. For the society, the benefits are a little different. So first of all, there are no air emissions, CO2, NOx and DPM as mentioned, no noise emissions, it's silent, it doesn't use fuel, it lowers road congestion, it uses less space, it also takes less public investment, and it doesn't cause any fatal accidents. It's rather the victim of fatal accidents caused by other road users. So if you want to quantify these cycling benefits, we usually quantify the ones for the public. So here again, the health benefits, the congestion, the fuel savings, the reduced emissions, and yeah. So these benefits, when quantified, amount to about 150 billion euro per year. And when we look at the table that shows a little bit the split where this added value is created in the different categories, we can very clearly see that the health benefits are by far the largest. And the reduced mortality refers to, well, to the reduced particle matters, obviously not to the reduced road casualties. So this is very significant numbers. And if you look at the sectors that benefit, we see that two sectors benefit in particular, and it's tourism industry. So due to the recreational and the tourism cycling, and of course the bicycle industry itself. And the economic impact for these two sectors is again another 62 billion euro. And again, when we look at the split, tourism is the one that reaps by far the most benefits. The numbers are from 2010-11. I didn't find any more recent ones, but with 44 billion, the tourism industry is the first impacted sector. And to make this a little bit more tangible, let's look at employment creation potential. So we see employment is created in bicycle retail, bicycle manufacturing, infrastructure, of course, bicycle tourism again, and services. And again, as circled in red, it's the bicycle tourism that creates by far the highest employment impact. And what is really interesting to policymakers is that these jobs are, let's say, more stable and more local than other jobs. So they benefit the local, the regional economy, and they also give access to the labor market for people of a little lower qualification. Now, if the bicycle modal share, so the percentage of trips taken by bike, is doubled, the employment benefit doesn't double proportionally, but it has a very significant growth potential as well. So this is to be taken into account. Last but not least, I've taken this slide from the website of the Union of International Cyclists. They say cycling and tourism a win-win combination. And just a few takeaways. I find attractive scenery and iconic cycling trails attract tourism. These tourists spend the nights in local hotels, eat at the local restaurants, visit the local bike repair shop, and attend the local attractions. And cycle tourists spend on average more than other types of tourists, so it's a very valuable customer base to have and to attract. And also many tourism organizations have realized this and are starting to promote cycling to attract more tourism. Putting it in this perspective of our times with COVID-19, cycling holidays not far from home, out in the fresh air, away from the crowds have become even more attractive, and so we want to elaborate a little bit more on this impact later in our panel. So having seen the multiple benefits of cycling, I want to ask the audience in our first poll. So what keeps you away from further cycling development? What are the barriers in your region that prevent cycling tourism development? And you can see the 5 optional answers on your screen. You just click with your mouse and it will be taken into account. So let's see, we're having over 80 attendees that have joined in the meantime. We had over 120 registered. I can see they're still coming online. So this is your first chance to interact with us. Okay. Maybe we can close the poll and see the results. So the most limiting factor is the lack of a long-term vision and political support. Okay, so this is something that we will address today and see what kind of political support can be provided and how this can impact. Lack of knowledge on how to develop cycling support. Also that will be addressed. So I'm looking forward to have these questions a little bit illustrated in our coming presentations. And this is time for me to hand over to Lotte for the introduction of our first speaker.
Thank you very much, Katharina, for this presentation. I'm sure that we'll address many of the points that you mentioned later on during our panel discussion. Now we are continuing with the next presentation, and I would like to invite Alain and Jose Carlos from Spain County Council of Huelva. They are representing EcoCycle project and will deliver a keynote speech how to support cycling tourism in a coherent way. So first, Alain will start, and then Jose Carlos will continue.
I have a problem with my camera. Can you hear me, Venelina?
We hear you, but we don't see your slides. We see your Word document.
Yes.
Okay. And my documents, you can see them?
We see a Word document, Alain.
Just click on your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So.
And put it in full, exactly.
Yes. And afternoon to everybody. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizer and also the Interreg Europe program, because it's a very good timing for a webinar on cycling tourism. Just because we are in the period for the preparation of the holiday, and right now in our, let's say, configuration, cycling tourism is a real opportunity to test doing tourism on bicycle, and to explore, I would say, territories which could be closer to your location, of course, since there's no other, I would say, way to discover a territory than by bicycle. It's very interesting to do that, and you have time and people for this. So thank you for the organizer. Of course, there's one open question for many public authorities in Europe right now, and the question is if cycling tourism is an emergent, relevant, and a sustainable modality of tourism. So there are still uncertainties. There are still people are aware of the interest, but there's still a lot of information missing, and especially for the policymaker. So of course, let's say that cycling tourism is a real, genuine success story from Europe. There's no other place in the world where cycling has gained so much so far, and there's still a lot to do, but it's a very good start. And another point is that main advantage of this modality of tourism is that you control the speed of what you are doing. So I mean, it's very useful for exploring the territories, for visiting cultural heritage at the speed you want. You can stop and continue. You can do it with families and different people. So it's very easy process to tackle. And it has also a very good advantage if we compare with traditional, I would say, tourism offer, is that it allows you to better know less known destination. Those destinations where tourism are not really, let's say, principal activities. So that's opened a lot of possibilities for those territories. So mainly those goals for public authorities, questions from public authorities are how to increase cycling tourism share in my region. So basically this will be done through long-term strategy and short-term action plan, I would say. And also question.
You have already used 5 minutes. Please be a little bit more speedy. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, already 5 minutes? No. Yes, okay, I will do that. So there's a set of questions that, of course, public authorities should take care. So the one is about how your territories could be more attractive for cycling. So this is through infrastructure and through services. Infrastructure is being public investment, while services are more private-oriented activities. Another point is how to implement cycling tourism in the offer of tourism in tourism. So this is done through promotion, specific promotion activities. Then a very key point is about cycling tourism investment. So you will need to build a financial scenario for this. And finally, the last question, which for me is very important for the future of cycling, is cycling a cross-cutting issue like gender or sustainability, which would mean that cycling could be integrated in many regulations right now. So I have a lot of examples on this, but I will not talk about this right now. So one indicator which is very useful for us, it's called cycling modal share. So it's basically the share of different mode of transport within the total volumes. So it is cycling, it is car, it is public transportation, and let's say others. And so we, through these indicators, we can see that there's a gap, significant gap between northern European countries and the southern one. So I give you some figure of this. So for instance, the cycling modal share in Germany is about, for bicycle is about 12%, and the turnover for cycling tourism activity is about 11,000 million euro. For France, it is a little bit less, even if France has many expectations in the future, but it is about 4%, and turnover is at 500 million euro. And we can see that it is decreasing for Spain, which is only a CMS of 1.3%, and a turnover of 1,600 million euro. So it means that cycling tourism is much more developed in northern countries than in the southern one, and this is a little bit paradox, because usually the southern countries in Europe are more oriented to tourism than the northern one. So there's a great potential for the countries from the south to grow. Right now, a little about the current trend from bicycle use. So we could see over the last years that the use grow in urban and suburban areas. So this is due to, of course, the last policies implemented and many investment in cycling paths in the cities. But at the same time, we could see that there's a decreasing use of bicycle for rural areas and for youth. So this is something that we have to take into account, of course, in our thinking. So let's have a very quick, let's say, set of activities you should take into consideration when supporting cycling tourism in your region, in your territories. So the first point and the key point is to have strategies and planning. That's, of course, when you will start to do something, you should start by thinking about what you will do. Then another barrier you will find very quickly is about the competences on cycling tourism. As Katharina says, you have competences in environment. You have competences in, of course, infrastructure, mobility, tourism, health, education, sport. So this is a complex situation, and you need to have kind of governance adapted to those contexts. Then, of course, you should take also into account that the attraction of your territories regarding cycling, and this is mainly done from or through outstanding offer. So we will see that what do we mean by outstanding offer, but it's EuroVelo is one of it, and what we call flagship route is another way to do it. You will not be able to do anything if you do not consider at a very basic moment at the beginning the bottom-up participatory processes, because the key for sustainability is to involve all the people and practicants and people interested in this. Together with this, you will have to support behavior change, especially in some areas where you do know that there's few use of the bicycles, and there's very interesting policies and very interesting practices around this. And of course, to pay and to finance all this, you need scenarios. So there's many ways to finance cycling tourism, and the project where we come from, EcoCycle, our, let's say, objective was to impact the regional operational program. So this is the way European funds are managed by the region, and especially I would say, to do it regarding natural protected areas. Okay, so in our EcoCycle project, we finalize the development phase. So we will end it by we will issue 5 action plans, and those action plans, let's say, gather a set of actions which have been concentrated into 4 categories of action, which are able to impact the regional operational programs. That is funding those actions. So the first category is EuroVelo. We will have a very interesting speech on this by Ed further on. Then Europe can fund also flagship routes. So we will have also an example of this in Poland. Actions Europe could fund new policy instruments, and we will have an example from my colleague Jose Carlos. And finally, Europe are very, let's say, designed to promote the tourism in natural protected areas where there's many needs. So I will not enter in the 3 first presentation. I just outline that for any promotional policy regarding cycling tourism, you need to have an eyes on transnational EuroVelo or on regional fragment route. I mean, EuroVelo is consolidated label in Europe, and for your region, a flagship route will be the best way to access local cultural heritage from the cycling side. It is easy to market, and it really opens perspective for sustainable tourism. Regarding cycling in a protected area, I mean, it's mostly depending on the funding included in the regional operational program. It is right now accepted that this is the best way to explore those protected area without any side effect. Of course, it should appear fit, but and so the expectation right now is on the way park management authorities are using those competences. There's many examples also on how protected area are using cycling for opening, I would say, those territories. Finally, regarding financial scenario, we have been very impressed in EcoCycle on one financial instrument, which is called Integrated Territorial Investment, ITI instruments, for regarding the capacity of the instrument for leveraging multiple EU funding streams. So this has been applied in Cadiz, and we consider this as a good practice, so I will comment it right now. Sorry. And so I will go through. Am I okay with the timing?
No, you're far beyond, but it's interesting. Okay, but please be a little bit more synthetic. Thank you.
Okay, so there's four good practices we would like to comment, but I will not have the time to comment it deeply, so you will have it on the website. So the cycling plan of Andalusia, which has been a policy instrument for the regulation of cycling activities in this region. It has been a very, let's say, very useful instrument, even if it was not used so long. But it's very useful and the new instruments at that time. So regarding flagship route categories, we have a good practices on the rural valley site pass, which is, let's say, one of the most, let's say, known riverside site pass is now certified with 4-star quality. So this is a reference in this kind of things. As I was telling you, ITI is a very interesting tool. In Cadiz, it has leveraged about 39 million euro and was able to support about 155 kilometers of EuroVelo 8 route and about 134 of non-EuroVelo routes. So this is very remarkable for this region, as there were no infrastructure. And finally, as one of the let's say numerous services around cycling tourism as a good practices, we outline the interest of the initiative called Bet and Bike from the German Federation of Cycling, where you can have a kind of test of different location and services around the location. I'm very sorry for being there. Yes, so I give the floor to José Carlos. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Alain. Thanks to the organizer, to the internet platform, Europe. So let me go quickly, briefly through one of the action plans in our action plan for Andalusia. It's called the Bicycle Plan of the province of Huelva. The EcoCycle project focuses on implementing a European network for the promotion of cycling tourism in natural areas. To meet this goal, through the project action plan, we expect to develop sound planning all along with the second phase. I mean, planning will allow authorities to dispose of investments, guaranteeing quality services in a sustainable mobility environment all around the bicycle. This is very important, this goal. Guaranteeing quality services in a sustainable mobility environment. And our goal is to deploy a territorial policy to address the promotion of bicycle and its use, improving territorial mobility through a planned network. Also to enhance natural and cultural heritage perception, for sure. The regulatory framework on the needs for planning infrastructures and services will draw up a scenario for better governance in the promotion of cycling tourism, requiring new policy instruments. The proposal for developing this bicycle plan for the province of Huelva through the Common Action Plan for Andalusia is an outcome as the result of reflecting on the need for developing new policy instruments to achieve the project objectives, getting inspiration from the cycling plan of Andalusia, which has been identified as selected as a good practice for the partnership. As you can see in the slide, for the EcoCycle project, we address what could be described as a second planning stage. It aims to raise bottom-up initiatives from territory to strengthen up a capillary cycling network in the province, in our province. This forthcoming bicycle plan will focus on the following objectives. One of them is to take advantage of existing resources on territory, including cultural or natural heritage and disuse infrastructure. This is very important. Not least, to pay attention to the private rural areas and remote areas throughout the territory, to promote low-impact tourism and sustainable rural mobility, and to deseasonalize visits thanks to the temperate climate during the whole year, since we are in Andalusia in Southern Europe. The bicycle plan as a planning tool will address the above-mentioned goals through the strategies that you can observe in the slide, such as a coherent and segmented development of routes according to users and target activities, to create a network of non-motorized tracks for bicycles, to create a network, as I said before, and complement the current and under-development tourism offer we're offering in the province, and promoting cycling as a high-quality product. This is going to be under development now by our regional government to consolidate the routes and other value facilities for family cycling as a target respected users, extend the influence of the EuroVelo 1 route to the province, as Alain mentioned before, to identify and cement sport cycling is a very important objective, to encourage social participation in coordination with a monitoring parliament. This is a bottom-up system, trying and educate in sustainable mobility, and locate a suitable funding stream. For phase 2, it's expected for our project, the EcoCycle project, to influence and impact on the current and the coming operational program, and make a reflection on potential funding tools. You can see there are some example those funding streams from the European Union that we are expecting to use for the project. The European Regional Development Fund, the European Social Fund, both of them through the Regional Operational Program. An example we can use from the European Regional Fund for Rural Development. We have a very good program. It's carried out by the Ministry of Agriculture. It's the so-called Green Velo program. We aim to explore innovative funding tools such as an ITI, Integrated Territorial Investment, especially focused in our case in cycling. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jose Carlos. Thank you very much, Alain. I'd like also Alain to turn on his camera, please. I think your presentation set actually the scene. Actually, you explained in a very informative way what it takes to develop cycling tourism in a coherent way. Alain, you mentioned some of the important aspects that need to be considered by public authorities in this regard, like having the proper strategies in place, mapping of competences, promoting the importance of promoting cycling tourism, bottom-up and participatory processes, and so on, just to name a few. Before we look at the chat, I would like to ask you, should the cycling tourism have its own dedicated regional strategy in your view? And if so, who should develop it?
Yes, I think it's a key point. If you don't have a strategy, you don't have a vision, a long-term vision, and it is very difficult to plan any investment. So we are not anymore talking about, let's say, an alternative or whatever. It should be a specific policy which gather all the competences within a regional governance. This is what we found out in EcoCycle. So far, for the regional government we have been working with, most departments were working by themselves, and so it was not at all efficient way to work. So our recommendation is to have a first evaluation of where competences are located within your regional government or within your, I would say, public administration, because such kind of exercise, I would say prospective exercise, should be done at all levels of public administration. Of course, much more for at the regional level, because they are managing their public authorities for managing EU fundings. So this is the point for those regional administration to have a clear and also inclusive strategy. I would say inclusive because they should include also the other level of territories, that is the provincial territories or the municipality or local territories. This is a key point. And so at the same time, this strategy, as we could see in Andalusia with a, let's say, with the first plan for the bicycle, you need to have the possibility for a better governance around this. Because what you could do in year 1, you could avoid it in year 4, So this is something that should be limited as much as possible of political change, and as you know, this happens. And so you need a strategy and a very good governance for the sustainability of what you are thinking about.
Thank you, Alain. So long-term vision, strategy in place, good governance are the buzzwords, the keywords
Yes,
in your view to develop cycling tourism in a more coherent way. Thanks a lot for this. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do, but I would like to reserve this question for the panel discussion because everybody can comment on it. And it is, what concrete measures can be recommended for local authorities? But I want to give the other speakers the opportunity to contribute, and then we collect it and everybody should tackle it. So.
Yes. Okay, so we will come back to this question later on during the panel discussion. Thanks a lot, Jose Carlos. Thanks a lot, Alain, for your very informative presentations. Also supporting the points that were made with practical examples from your project, from EcoCycle project. This was very interesting, very informative. Thanks a lot. Now we are moving on, and I would like to Jose Carlos, could you please? Yes, thank you. I would like to invite our next speaker, Magdalena Osełka from Poland, who will present a good practice that has been identified as part of our Way project. Magdalena, the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me? The first question is?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, and now do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, everything's perfect. So hello, hi everyone. My name is Magdalena Osełka and I'm from Poland, but not from the partner region participating in our Way project. And I would like to thank for the invite to Podkarpackie region. So your partner in our Way project and my organization's partner in Green Velo, East of Poland cycling trail. Green Velo, which is so far one of the biggest cycling ventures in Poland. And the very fact that I speak to you today shows for the key point of my presentation, which is cooperation. Cooperation in building and promoting coherent cycling product, interregional, which is the very important spine for cycling tourism in Eastern Europe now. What is Green Velo actually? I hope that you've heard about our project and my biggest hope is that you've already cycled each and every kilometer, and we've got 2,000 kilometers of sites and landscapes. We've got 5 national parks and 15 landscape parks involved in this project. But first and foremost, it's the result of 5 independent regional EU investment projects. So instead of doing 5 separate cycling paths system in each region, our self-government officials decided to cooperate with other regions to create this unique spine, which now joins joins and connects my region, so to this very southeast, to Warmińsko-Mazurskie in it ends in Elbląg. But what's very important is that it's a recognizable brand with coherent promotion and marketing strategy, which is performed by partners. So it's Podkarpackie region, my region, Świętokrzyskie, so a bit tongue twister, so it's Holy Cross region, as well as Podlaskie, Lubelskie and Warmińsko-Mazurskie. The project involved a huge amount of work by self-governmental officials, other municipalities, tourism board, tourist organizations, a lot of cycling societies, which gave their input about how the route should be promoted and how it should follow our tourists, how it should lead our tourists through 5 unique regions of Eastern Poland. But the most important fact is that we did this venture together with 5 other regions of Eastern Poland, with coherent promotion and marketing strategy. We had a lot of money to do it, so we had a huge promotion and marketing EU project, which was launched in 2015. So to have the numbers right, we had approximately 5.8 million euro for promotion only, so quite a lot of money to do it. And however, it was my organization, Tourism Board of the Świętokrzyskie region, which was responsible for this promotional component, but we did it in cooperation with other regions. So there was one representative from each region who had their saying in everything we did, and every marketing and promotion aspect we did and we developed. Nowadays, after this promotional project, we have an annual cooperation agreement. So each year, self-governmental representatives meet. They set the goals for the year to come, and the agreement is signed by 5 parties. And now when we have COVID-19, this may be a bit tricky to do it, but later on about that. We are very coherent in the management of the trail. We have a unified trail marking and signposting. The qualities alike in each and every region of Eastern Poland. Moreover, we've got cyclist service areas, which are also maintained by each region on its own. But we also got a website and a mobile app. I think it's a must-have for each and every working tourism product. But this website and app is being financed by 5 regions who give us 20,000 zlotys annually just to develop and promote the website and mobile app. Moreover, we are coherent in branding quality, also in strategy, in planning. We have annual meetings with our partners in 5 regions. We are constantly online. We are working together. For example, this year we are setting huge radio campaign in Poland, which was talked over for quite a long time by all the parties. But what we are especially proud of is the cycling friendly places system. This is a unified certification system for our entrepreneurs, for the business people around the trail. So all the accommodation facilities, tourist information points are joined by this system, which is unified in all the 5 regions. So I think that our story, our experience is very valuable, especially for self-government officials who are looking for cooperation patterns in a development of cycling tourism products. But I myself, I represent a tourism organization, a tourism board, which very strongly cooperates with not only with my self-government from my region, but we are cooperating with 4 other self-governments. So I think we know how to do it, and despite some difficulties, we keep the Green Velo project going. Moreover, we've got multi-regional tourist product owners and managers who are looking for some inspiration how to reach out to other regions with their products. If you wish to expand your product to other regions, we are also eager to share our experience with you. But we may say that the chain is as strong as its weakest link, and its saying is especially strong and useful for bikes, for cycling, and also for such product as a cycling trail. We know that our solutions have some downfalls. First and foremost, there is no one cycling Green Velo operator. So each region is responsible for its part of the trail, and it fails. It's a huge fail when it comes to customer service, I would say. Tourists are very surprised when they hear that they cannot call to one office and know everything about Green Velo, but we try to put those tourists through to some other regions. Moreover, it's less flexible. I told you about this annual agreement which is signed, but now, for example, COVID struck, and we had some regional and some foreign events planned. We wanted to go outside, do some cycling events to promote Green Velo abroad. Now we cannot do it, and the whole agreement had to be rearranged and re-signed by 5 parties, self-governments. So there was a lot of red tape, a lot of difficulties to fix that and to respond swiftly to this pandemic situation. Moreover, I think, and from my experience, self-governments are not the best partners to talk about money, especially to entrepreneurs, travel agents who want to develop their package tours in relation to Green Velo. I think that some other organization which would be less self-governmental based would be better to develop a commercial offer of Green Velo. And the last problem, I would say, is the limited copyright. As I told you, my organization was responsible for doing a huge promotional project in 2015, and we've developed Green Velo brand, logo, trail which is visible everywhere around the trail, and we've given limited copyright, time-limited copyright to our partners. It expires soon, and I know that partners may have less confidence in us if we are going to prolong that cooperation and to and not to, for example, want to be paid for that. It depends on further cooperation strategy, but I believe that the strategy that our cooperation's been very good thus far, and even though this our EU confinements to end the project in 2021.
Magdalena, sorry, could you please speed up a little bit, because
yes,
we're running out of time.
Okay, yeah, so I'm very confident that we are going to survive that, and despite some downfalls, the cooperation is perfect and still going. So thanks for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magdalena, for this interesting and inspiring presentation. I think the practice that you presented has a strong learning potential, and it is in the mechanism of multi-level cooperation that you have established and you followed during the implementation of this project. And you also highlighted your experience with the joint promotion, which is I found quite interesting. I have one question for you. You mentioned the cooperation with businesses. You mentioned the cyclist-friendly places. Cycling tourism helps diversify local economies. Did your project achieve such an impact on the economy of the participating regions? And could you please say a few words about this, if so?
I think yes, I can tell on the example of my region, Holy Cross region. We have our local gross domestic product is generated by tourism by 3%. And I think that Green Velo strongly encouraged a lot of entrepreneurs to build their businesses around Green Velo. So we are talking about accommodation facilities which are growing around the trail. And there is also a growing offer changing from accommodation to, for example, cycling rentals and so on, or organizing local tours on Green Velo, especially on COVID. We had a lot of travel agents who decided to change their profile from outgoing to incoming, and they decided to organize local tours on Green Velo trail. So definitely, yes, such projects help to develop local economies. Moreover, cyclist-friendly places can take special loans from a Polish bank if they are a cyclist-friendly place. So it gives a guarantee that they keep cooperating on the project.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. Thanks again. Any questions, Katharina, from the chat?
Yes, there is a question, Magdalena, hang on, from Mercedes Munoz for you. And she would like you to develop a little bit what are the main issues in promoting cycling in natural areas specifically. So what are the specific things to watch out?
In what areas?
In natural areas, like in national parks, I guess.
To promote the cycling tourism, especially in our national park, I would say it's difficult, for example, to make people believe that it's safe to combine cycling, hiking, and other aspects of using those national parks, for example. But when it comes to the problems which we encountered, well, the national parks on Green Velo are very open. They were very open, especially in Lubelskie region, for example, to welcome Green Velo project, and they decided not to charge cyclists who travel on Green Velo, but for example, hikers are charged. So this shows the sense of cooperation from national parks, for example. So it may be quite difficult, but I think that COVID might help with that, because people switched to cycling nowadays. It was visible in that presentation. So we observe a lot of people interested in national parks. So I think that first and foremost, you need to cooperate and you need to speak with the managers of the national park, because they know their land, and you need to speak to them first.
Great, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, so with that, I would like to launch the second poll to our audience. After all that you have heard and all that you have heard about strategy, we want to know a little bit in your region, in your area. Cycling, tourism being at the intersection of these two disciplines, is cycling tourism addressed in your regional strategy? Do you have a dedicated regional cycling tourism strategy, or is it part of the mobility strategy? Is it tackled by the tourism strategy, or is it not mentioned specifically but somehow indirectly, or is it not covered by any strategy? Let's hear a little bit from the audience. Okay, wow. So you have heard Alain has been calling for a dedicated cycling tourism strategy and planning. Now, 3% say we have a dedicated regional cycling tourism strategy. So way to go, regional policymakers. Mostly it is part of the tourism strategy. Okay, so the mobility policymakers should maybe make a little bit more effort to not only think about the urban aspects, but see cycling more as a tourism vector as well. And quite a few have it not mentioned explicitly and not covered by any strategy. Okay, so I think this says that in our current regional strategies, cycling and tourism and the combination of both is not as much dedicatedly mentioned as it could have or it should be. And maybe COVID is giving us the impetus to do it in the next period. All right. So to give you some more inspiration about what could be done, I would like to call Ed Lancaster from the European Cyclist Federation. Please, Ed, turn on your camera and tell us all about the EuroVelo trail. Okay.
Thanks,
Over
Katharina. I'll just share my screen.
Good.
Hopefully you can all see that.
Yes, just put it in presentation mode.
There we go.
No. Yes. And put it in,
yes.
in full presentation mode. Yes. There you are.
You can see it. Okay. So you'll have to let me know if it's a bit slow when I move through the slides, so I don't start talking too early about something that's showing on my screen but not yours. I'm Ed Lancaster, Senior Policy Officer at the European Cyclist Federation. We're the umbrella body acting on behalf of all the national and regional cycling organisations in Europe and a little bit beyond. We have over 80 members in something like 40 different countries, and we represent 500,000 individual cyclists. Today I've been asked to speak about 3 quite big topics in 8 minutes, so we'll see how I get on. We've got the questions and the panel discussion afterwards, so you can pick up any questions that you have and maybe go into a bit more detail. But the 3 things I want to touch on are the EuroVelo, the European Cycle Route Network, the investments that we see are needed to develop cycle tourism routes, including the EuroVelo routes. And then I was asked also to talk about what role EU funds can play here. Of course, some of these topics, some of the other speakers have spoken about, so we can maybe rush over those where they overlap. So EuroVelo, we heard a little bit about it earlier. Alain gave a nice introduction to it. It's 17 long-distance cycle routes that connect the whole continent. Hopefully you can see the map on your screens now. Each route has a particular theme. So for example, EuroVelo 1 is the Atlantic Coast route. EuroVelo 13 is the Iron Curtain Trail. It follows the former Iron Curtain. And we have EuroVelo 3 as the Pilgrims route, which combines various pilgrimage paths. Wherever possible, we're using existing national cycle route networks. So we're not creating brand new routes for the sake of it. We're trying to combine existing routes. Of course, in some countries and regions, as some of you will be familiar, we don't have national networks yet. So in those countries, we're working with our national partners to try and establish them, and the EuroVelo routes being part of that, the backbone of national routes. For those of you who haven't seen this before, then you're maybe looking at this map and thinking these are colossal route. Who's going to be cycling from the North Cape all the way down to Malta? Well, we do get some people who cycle entire EuroVelo routes, but far more common is that people will cycle smaller sections as part of their holiday, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, or a weekend. And of course, if you break these routes down to the local level, they of course go through cities, towns, villages. So they can be used for mobility as well. So it's not just a cycle tourism product, but of course that is an important aspect of it. The network at the moment, we've just had a new route join the network, EuroVelo 14. So it now brings us over to 90,000 kilometers. And as you can imagine, on a network this size, the status of the routes, the condition varies quite a lot. And we would argue, understandably, it's not necessary to have the same quality of infrastructure in the center of Amsterdam as it is in northern Finland, where there's not much infrastructure. So what we've tried to do is communicate as clearly as we can to the users the current status of the network in that location, so that anyone wanting to cycle that route is fully aware before they set off what to expect. We've given here an overview of this is EuroVelo 4 Central Europe route, which runs from France all the way to Ukraine, Kiev. And I've chosen this one because it does show a variety of different statuses. This is one of the more mixed ones, I guess you could put it like that. If you look at the key going along the middle of the screen with the dots and the dashes, you can see on the far right we have the route at the planning stage. These are sections of the route which at the moment is essentially a line on a map, not too much more than that. So if you want to cycle that route, you're on your own. You have to look up the maps and make your own way, which does appeal to some types of cycle tourists. Not the biggest target markets, but it does appeal to some. Then we have route under development. These are sections of the route whereby there's either some kind of signposting on the route, national or regional signposting, or there's information online that you can find out where the route goes. You can follow it if you have access to online resources. Developed routes, this is the long red line. These are the sections where there's both national, regional signposting on the ground and also information online for you to follow. So you should be able to follow those sections relatively easily. Those with the yellow are where we also have the EuroVelo signs. You can see at the bottom of the screen on the left, we have an example from France of a EuroVelo 4 sign in situ. You can see the little, hopefully you can see the little 4 number with the yellow stars going around in the circle. That shows that's the EuroVelo 4 route information panel. So you can find those on those parts of the route that are signed yellow. And then the final category which we actually have on EuroVelo 4 is a certified route. This is a route that's gone through a very detailed survey process we have, and it meets our minimum criteria in order to be classified as a certified EuroVelo route. At the moment, only EuroVelo 15 meets that minimum criteria. So only on the EuroVelo 15 map do we have some green showing. In terms of what investments we think are needed to bring these routes out, I mean, Katharina gave a very good, the flip side to this is the benefits of cycling and cycling tourism, and I think Katharina gave a very good introduction to that, so I won't go through the benefits, and hopefully you're familiar with those anyway. But in terms of what investments are needed to bring these routes up to the higher standard and to appeal to the widest possible target groups, as I say, some pioneer cycle tourists will cope with not too much in the way of services, but if you want to appeal to the broadest possible range of people, then you should provide dedicated services. We summarize in this what we call the tourism development wheel, and you can see at the top left you have the cycle tourists. If you want to increase the number of cycle tourists, you need to make investments in the route infrastructure, the services, the marketing and promotion, the monitoring and organization. To say a few words very briefly about each of these, I know time's ticking on. Infrastructure, cycle tourists need attractive, safe and comfortable routes. You see a very nice route here from Switzerland. It's important to have clear and consistent signposting that follows national and European standards. I know in some countries you don't yet have national standards, but again, that's something where we encourage, we work with national partners to try and put them in place and obviously make these clear to people using the routes. Good connections with public transport. More and more people are looking to look at the sustainability of their tourism trips. So if they can combine bike rides with public transport connections, then that's very much a popular choice. Having cycle-friendly services schemes, I think Magdalena gave a good introduction to what they hope to do in Poland on this. So this is services, whether it's hotels, restaurants, repair shops, points of museums, tourist attractions, giving some dedicated surfaces, so place where people can lock their bike in safety. And you can see this is an example from Hungary where they've not just provided the bike rack, but also a very dramatic roof over the top in case it rains. Then there's also promotion and marketing. The other speakers have talking about having clear, consistent, and easily accessible information, both online and printed material. Monitoring, both in terms of the people using it, so user monitoring, doing counters and surveys to find out about the types of people that are coming and the number of people that are coming. That can give you some good data. We've talked a bit about some of the difficulty getting political support. If you have data, it can help make those arguments. That's why that's important. Also monitoring in terms of the sense of the quality of the route, so making sure you've identified areas that need improvement. Maybe there's sections where signs are missing or signs fallen off. So making sure that the route is maintained and improved. And then finally, again, I think all the speakers, I think the clear message that came across all the previous speakers was the importance of organization or mapping of competences, as Alain referred to it as. I think bringing together all the necessary partners. It's not necessarily one body that's going to be able to achieve all the things you want to do to make a cycle tourism destination. So bringing together the partners and having a long-term plan for working together. So yeah, these are the different thing. The wheel emphasizes the fact that you should look at these in the round and not just focus on one aspect over the other. So you can have a very good quality route, but if you're not promoting it, then people won't come. Similarly, if you're doing a lot of effort into the promotion and marketing, but the infrastructure is not there yet, then people are going to be disappointed when they come. So looking at this in a round is the way to move forward. I don't know, what am I doing with time, Katharina? How long have I got? One minute?
Just carry on.
Okay, I'll be very quick.
You're a very speedy speaker and it's interesting, so go on.
Okay, so just quickly on the role EU funds can play, and as you can imagine, as the European Cyclist Federation, we get asked a lot of questions about this. The basic answer is EU funds can play quite a big role, whether it's doing promotional campaigns. You can see on the left-hand side an event to encourage more people to cycle and walk, whether it's funding pilot projects, so maybe buying some cargo bikes for a public authority. Infrastructure, things like the Connecting Europe facility can pay for quite sizable infrastructure, cycling and walking infrastructure. And also promotion and marketing with websites, guides, tools, example, can also be funded through EU funds. I think many of you will be familiar how the EU funding works, but just to give a very broad overview, funding is generally either managed here in Brussels, the European level programs. Then you have the Interreg programs, is transnational and cross-border programs that operate with several countries or several regions in neighboring countries. And then you have the national and regional level programs over on the right. And this is common EU funds generally, but I think it's particularly emphasized in terms of cycling is that the majority of the EU funds that spent on cycling are spent through these national and regional levels. So it's not funds that are managed here in Brussels, it's managed in your capitals or in your regional headquarters. You can see there that during the current financial period, the one that's coming to an end, nearly the majority by far the majority of the funding is on that national regional level. The ECF tried to get an overview of where there is opportunities to spend EU funds on cycling during the current period in what we call the EU Funds Observatory for Cycling. Like, we can share the link afterwards so you can have a look at that. We read something like 210 operational programs to see where there were references to cycling, not just cycling tourism, but cycling generally. This is what we came out with. You can see on the left-hand side the scale in terms of millions of euros that could be spent on cycling during that current period. We won't know yet for a number of years exactly how much was spent. You can see that by far, you can see the best in class, if you like, they stand out quite strongly. Poland by far got the most allocated towards cycling. And I'm pleased to see in the list of people intending with the team from Pomorski region in northern Poland. I know they've allocated a lot of EU funding for cycling. They're doing some great work there, developing EuroVelo routes as well as other routes. What was the key to these countries that are standing out here in terms of having significant amounts of money allocated to cycling? Well, it's that they had clear references to cycling in the programming documents, whether that's a very explicit reference, this money should be spent on a specific cycling measure, or whether it's more broadly sustainable transport or promoting soft mobility, words like this. The clearer the reference, the stronger, the more likely the money is going to be available to spend on cycling. Again, these are probably familiar to some of you, but these are the documents where we need to see these strong references. The partnership agreement agreed between each member state and the Commission. From that, it will vary from country to country, but the approach they take, but the operational programs, whether it's on a regional basis or thematic. From those operational programs, there may be 100 calls during the next financial period, and from those 100 calls, maybe 1,000 projects. These are just giving an idea of the scale of the number of documents where the stronger the wording we have about cycling, the more likely the money can be spent on that. So I'm going to end with a plea to all of you listening. I know many of you are representing the regional level, and this is the point at which these documents are being put together for the next financial period up to 2027. So we need you, if you're the one with a hand on the pen that's going to be writing these documents, please include references to cycling. If it's not you, please find out who is the managing authority and put in your call. If the best case is if you have a concrete proposal, you can give them and say, this is what we want to spend EU funding from, and not just go saying we need funding for cycling in general. It's better to have a specific idea in mind. And yeah, we very much call on you over the next 6 to 12 months. It's probably going to be crucial in setting the framework for the next 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Very instructive. I think you had some very concrete examples of what could be done. So, I mean, you're from the European Cyclists Federation. Would you be ready to provide a guidance on a one-to-one basis if a regional mobility or tourism policymaker was contacting you in search for like good recommendations?
Yeah, we're more than happy to do that. Obviously, in some countries we have our member groups, and some of them follow these topics in detail. So in those cases, maybe our member in that country is better placed to do it. But yeah, for sure, if it's a country where we don't have a strong member at the moment, or whether they don't have the knowledge on EU funds, then we're more than happy to take questions or queries or give advice or guidance. And we try and provide as much information as possible on our website, ecf.com. For people that want to help with this campaign of ours to get more EU funds for cycling. We saw the previous financial period, approximately 600 million euros is allocated for cycling. We managed to achieve during the current period that comes to an end, that rose to 1.3 billion. So we're really trying to double that again. We're trying to get it up to something like 3 billion during this next period if we can. So that's our lobbying goal. But we need your help to do that.
Well, you have the help of a very powerful virus. You know, the dam of one is the support for others. And I think this is a good entry for our panel discussion because, well, can I invite all the other speakers to come online and switch your cameras on, please? And join us and discuss the first question. I mean, you've all mentioned it. Tourism is hit very hard during COVID, and cycling has been kind of discovered by the last person, really, as a safe means of individual mobility. And now with the holiday season coming close, I think maybe many people are considering suddenly a cycling holiday for the first time ever. So is there any quick measures that you could recommend concretely to support cycling tourism, let's say riding on the COVID wave? So like quick measures, and then what other measures should be there on a bit longer term to support cycling tourism? Just go as you want to take the floor, please. First come, first speaking.
Perhaps you can do something like they did in France, where you have some kind of fee for repairing your bike. I mean, you have up to 50 euro, I would say, depending on the bike you are. So this has been done to reintroduce about 2 million bikes into the daily use, I would say, and such kind of things are very interesting because they promote to repair the bike. So this is job creation. So something like this could be done for increasing your holidays in bike.
Did you say a fee for repairing the bike, like to take out the bike that you haven't used for ages?
Exactly.
Yeah, from our side, we're trying to very much promoting the development of tourism over this summer under the hashtag Restart Cycle Tourism. So we're trying to collect ideas and advice that's coming from different parts of Europe. There's been some really nice examples coming through here in Belgium. There's been free bike carriage on public transport on the trains until the end of the year to encourage domestic tourism. We also saw in Denmark, where there's lots of islands, there's free ferry connection for people with bikes. Some other initiatives in France, we spoke there about France. They've put some France Velo Tourism, it's a good site for people wanting to holiday in France. They've put a lot of advice for first-time cycle tourists because they were expecting a lot more people to take up cycle tourism this summer than have done previously. So they've given some good advice and tips for people doing it for the first time. Also, another nice initiative from Luxembourg where they're offering free luggage carriage. So if you book hotel up to 6 nights in a row, they'll transport your luggage behind, so you don't have to cycle with it. So it's a very nice initiative they're doing there. But we're collecting it, as I say, under this hashtag Restart tourism over the summer.
Okay, we will share that. Like hashtag restart cyclotourism in one word without any gaps. Cool. Okay, very good.
So
Magdalena, do you have something? Ah, Jose.
So I would suggest maybe to start occupying or visiting those abandoned or disaster infrastructures, just like the low traffic roads within the, just to appropriate in the territory. Maybe it's a good point to start seeing people all around safely, for sure. But I think it can be a good starting point just to boost cycling tourism.
You mean appropriate the territory in the sense that you make a cycle pass on a low traffic road?
Maybe it can be safely. Yes. Yes. Listen, if you're using the territory, those low traffic roads, it can be a good example. Maybe it's a good point. If you, doing safely, it's a good point to start making it familiar. Yes, especially in rural or deprived or maybe in remote areas. I think it can be an exciting exploration in the landscape, for example.
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. I think there's a lot of potential in rural areas. You don't need, if the volumes of traffic are low and the speeds of the cars are relatively low, then you don't need dedicated infrastructure. You can just use these quiet country lanes that are out there to be used. It's just a case of putting the signs up, normally dedicated signs. Of course, looking at the broader picture, also in the urban areas, we've seen a lot of talk about doing temporary cycle paths to deal with the current situation in terms of coronavirus. So of course, the goal is to try and turn these temporary paths into permanent ones. And I think if more and more people are using it, and the figures we're starting to get some figures through from the start of the year. For example, in France, numbers are up 27% on 2019. So that more and more people are. It's not just the perception. More and more people are getting on their bikes. And if we have dedicated infrastructure, that's only going to encourage more people to do it, because often it's that perception of danger that's often puts people off doing it. So if they have dedicated infrastructure in the cities, then it will encourage more people to do it.
Yeah, in Poland, I would say that it's even hard to buy some cycling accessories. It's became so popular recently that it's really hard to buy a bike. I would say nowadays. But from my marketing, from marketing point of view, I think that the biggest issue is to channel this cycling traffic from the most frequently visited parts, for example, Green Velo, which is advertised, to some other areas which need to be supported, but they have a lot of potential. And I think that it's very important to do so, to promote those low volume traffic areas of your region and check if it works, right? Because then we can support local business people who are waiting for the cycling tourists to come to drink coffee there or to have lunch. So I think that when it comes to domestic tourism, because this season will be domestic mostly, I think that that's the biggest challenge. And when it comes to Green Velo, we have a set of cycling tours which we can take not on Green Velo itself, but in the very area of it. So we've established a set of 15 up to 20 alternative routes which we can take around Green Velo to visit those less visited places by cyclists.
And just to add one point, what Jose Carlos mentioned about disused infrastructure, Mercedes Munoz from Our Way projects highlights the importance of greenways in this regard. And Our Way project already identified many good practices that could be useful and interesting for other regions.
So I agree, it's a very strong program this time. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we can move to the next question, perhaps. What are the things to watch out for when supporting cycling tourism, in your view? What can go wrong when it's ill-planned? How to avoid the pitfalls?
If I may start, because I think that we encountered some pitfalls in Green Velo project, because at the very beginning we had very high expectation that it's going to be 100% separated cycling lane which you can travel, those paved beautiful road, and it's not like that. It's a cycling trail. Then we had the marketing, which somehow we may say exceeded the product. We overdid the marketing, and we had some negative opinion on the quality of the road, on the quality of the trail. Not when it comes to signposting, but there need to be some improvement related to the very way the trail leads. So putting it to some low volume roads, or doing some rearrangement of paving some roads and so on. So from our perspective, not exceed with marketing that much. I think that we did good promotion, but we somehow overdid it.
There's a thin line. Yeah.
Yes,
How about including the argument of COVID safe in this year in the promotion? Will it be something unsaid and implicit, or will you do it in a very explicit and forthcoming way?
We are thinking about doing it undercover COVID. So we do try not to scare people with those masks and hand sanitizers, because it's obvious that the hotels you are going to take and the roads you are going to take, the cyclists you are going to meet, there is some risk involved to traveling on this year. But I think you don't need to encourage people that cycling is the safest way to travel right now. So when it comes to promotion, we have to keep it in mind, especially when you run an accommodation facility. Then you need to convince that you are safe. But when it comes to general marketing of promotion of cycling tourists, it's obvious that it's safe. So you don't need to encourage, but you must somehow implicitly say that go, it's safe, but be implicit in it, because people have enough of COVID and those visions of people in masks, hand disinfectants, and all the stuff related to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of connected to that, the cycle tourism development wheel I showed, that you try and focus on all areas, not just on one. If the risk is, if you just focus on the promotion and marketing, then as you say, the infrastructure suffers, and there's people turning up on the route don't see what they expect. I think that comes back to the point on my slide where we showed the development status. So I think being clear, I think there's always a risk that people don't want to start promoting their cycle route until it's perfect. And of course, the answer is there's never a perfect cycle route. At some point, you do have to start promoting and marketing it. Just be clear what the conditions are and what to expect. So if at the moment it's just a public road and the signs are up, then make that clear. That's what the conditions are. But it's going to appeal to a certain types of cycle tourists.
Mm-hmm.
But time to time, tourist promotion is separate from infrastructure and so on. So the one department don't talk to the other one, so they don't know the state of the road. And at the time where social media is going very fast and sending news like this, it's very dangerous promotion, which is not reflecting what is really the situation. But again, it is because you are talking from different place.
So I agree with you, Alain, because I think a strong way of avoiding any kind of risk or pitfall can be through very strong planning. I mean, it is force you to a very deep reflection on what are the needs on the territory, just to avoid this kind of compulsive promotion. I mean, it's a very interesting thing to keep a deep reflection through planning.
Very good.
Yes, and I think what you say, Jose Carlos, is very nicely resounding. Also, what Ed showed in this development cycle, and I think it should bring us to our concluding panel question, like what can the public policymakers do? Where should they start, and what concretely should they do in this upcoming programming period, beyond the things maybe that Ed has already shown in his presentation? Last round.
So first of all, you know, it's a very technical issue, so policymakers should be assessed, and then they should integrate that this is not, let's say, something that is because bicycle could be seen as something a bit light. But it is not. It is really a sustainable mobility scheme which will take more and more place in the policy. And as I told before, it can be also cross-cutting thematics. So being relevant for many regulation in territories. So this is something very serious, and cycling tourism is a part of the totality. So I would recommend to be very serious in this ambition, and to be assessed really, because one of the worst things is to do something but not with the quality which should be expected, especially for urban areas where I would say some cycling paths are not designed with the quality it should be. So this is something that has to be very serious.
Yes, I would like to rise with a couple of reflections. So this keenness of on the bicycle, which has started in the last years, or even decades in some regions or areas, is now boosting all over Europe. Now we should keep developing plans from an urban perspective, but now especially I think from the rural context. So the private or the populated or remote areas, as I said before, definitely could take advantage of this positive impact on cycling. So if we spread a network of trails or tracks on the territory, besides flagship routes, I mean, we should develop a powerful tracks network to bring on rural mobility. I think it's a very strong point to develop in the future. Maybe if we manage natural historical heritage, integrating natural resources and protected areas from a sustainable point of view is a very good point to explore through those activities to take into account for the coming programming period.
Yeah, I think going back to some of the polls we've been doing this afternoon, 3% having a dedicated long-term cycle strategy. I mean, that's obviously somewhere where it'd be good to see the number going up. And obviously this fits into the EU funding question, because if you can go to the managing authority and say, this is our long-term plan, this is where we want to invest, then obviously you're in a much stronger position than just saying we need to increase the levels of cycling, but you're not quite sure how. So try and work on these plans. As I say, it's a crucial time, so you don't have too long to work on them. So it's a short-term activity, the next 6 months or so. Try and build up support for you, so you have as many people coming, different types of organizations supporting you, the tourism, the transport sector, the health. We talked about the different benefits. And then using the evidence you can get, both if you have regional data, then good, but if not, then international or national data, to try and get that political support. Because again, in the first poll, there was, I think it was lack of long-term vision and lack of political support was the main obstacle. These are the things that need to be worked on to try and get political support and to have a long-term vision, which then can be funded.
Agree, totally agree.
Agreed, yeah. I was a bit intimidated because my region's developing its strategy very slowly, but consistently and coherently. And those 3% gave me some courage that we are going to make it very soon, and that we are not the last in Europe not to have one.
You're not the last. And I think you've done already well with your interregional initiative. I think this is very nicely showing on a national level what can be done. And I liked really the examples that all of you have been bringing. Venelina, what do you think? I guess it's time to conclude our discussion in order not to stretch our audience. What do you think?
Yes, I think it's time to end this webinar, but I think all the presentations and thoughts and ideas that have been shared with us today were quite interesting, inspiring. I hope that many of you will have takeaway messages from this webinar. As a next step, we are going to prepare. We are going to put this recorded webinar on the website, and there will be also an article that will be prepared and also available on the website. The presentations, of course, will be shared as well. Yeah,
we will answer all the questions that have been coming through from the audience that we have answered that we were not able to address here. We will follow up on everything, either individually or in a group mailing. So don't worry, your questions are not getting lost. So that then I have a final question for the audience. And while I'm giving my thanks to the speakers, please, audience, use the chat function for the last time and tell us on which topics related to cycling tourism or to either cycling and tourism you want to hear more from us, topics that you would like us to develop in the future, because here, Venelina and I were very eager to take up the topics from the bottom and to follow the requests from the community in the services that the policy learning platform is shaping. So we can do another webinar or a smaller online discussion or a publication on topics that you choose to inspire us. So please, the chat box is open, and if we see that there are clusters of requests, we will also mention this in the follow-up article, and it might also be interesting here for our speakers. So while we're waiting for the audience to type in the chat box, just let us say a big thanks to all of you for your interesting presentations and your lively delivery and participation to the discussion. And yeah, Venelina, anything to promote and to announce? You have seen our policy briefs; they are available in the handout section. And all the links that have been mentioned and all the hashtags will also be shared. Okay, I will leave this a little bit more open to give people the chance to write in the chat. Okay, ways of using the ITI. Yes, that has already been requested 3 times, so there will definitely be a follow-up activity. So there was Cadiz, was it, with the ITI example? Yes, and
it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, of tremendous interest and very relevant and timely for the programming period, indeed. Yes, yes. Okay, good. Let's see, anything else? I will leave this. We will leave the chat open, and you can write 5 more minutes your topics. But I think we will conclude the official webinar here. Do you agree, Venelina?
Yes, definitely, Katharina. Thanks a lot again to our speakers, to the audience for the participation, and have a good afternoon and enjoy the summer. And go on a cycling vacation.
Yeah.
On the route number EuroVelo 15, which is fully certified. Where is this going from?
The Rhine cycle route. Switzerland, France, Germany.
I have been thinking about that. Actually, it's very attractive cycling there. There's a lot of wine stops.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you to wherever you are, and have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful summer, and be safe.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.